So, Chris, Steffi has set out this big question for us about the relationship between man and machine. And the title of this session is Artificial Intelligence and Humanism. And it seems to me that, certainly in Western societies at the moment, we're in a period where the public has become increasingly uneasy about what's going on in technology, and particularly the fear that innovation in technology is going to destroy a lot of what gives people purpose in their lives through jobs and so forth. Whereas in the tech sector, people are very optimistic about the future. So there's a real divide there. And I wonder if we can start by looking at, for you, what is happening at the moment? Is the rise of the artificial intelligence and large-scale technological substitution for jobs, is that going to bring real problems for humanity, or is this a great opportunity?
Well, you'd expect me to say that's a great opportunity, and I truly think so, because I would strongly disagree that there is a majority of people who have great fun in their jobs. It's one of the things that in technology people have the pleasure of having good times in their jobs. A lot of people are looking forward to go home every day because they don't like their jobs. And I think that for a long time we have made people work like machines. Anything that's a process is more machine-like. This is not people. And I think there's a huge opportunity by giving this time back to people. I mean, time is the only resource that we cannot replenish. We're given such and so much time, and once it's over, we're gone. And we have to use that in a better way. And I totally disagree with this notion that even if machines put everybody out of the job, that we'll all go and wilt and sit in the corner and be entertained to death. There's so much to do, right? We're very busy just keeping our daily lives up and running. In the meantime, there's lots of social problems we should be solving and lots of environmental problems we should be solving, and we don't seem to have the time.
There seem to be two issues that we should explore. I mean, one is, if you're out of a job, then you're quite likely to be out of money, and not having money is a big problem when people are very worried about the rise of inequality. The other is this question of how far is technology about to put people out of a lot of the traditional jobs that are out there, particularly for the middle class? I mean, how close do you think, well, let's start with that second question. Are we on the verge of a massive destruction of white-collar type of jobs, much as we saw the agricultural jobs wiped out 100 years ago and maybe a lot of manufacturing jobs wiped out 30 years ago?
Is it happening tomorrow? No, it definitely isn't. Is it happening soon? I would say very likely. Like the internet has changed so many sectors and verticals, is the introduction of machines that act more like people, because they can deal with uncertainty and strange input, definitely will bring us to that position. So, I mean, at your firm, you are currently taking out a lot of IT jobs and aspire to take out a lot more. Tell us a bit about why that's now happening and how that might spread into other parts of the economy. Yeah, actually, that's quite funny. I get asked a lot, so you're this IT guy and all your friends in tech must hate you because you put them out of the job. And if you look at it, we're building a technology that actually does IT operations like people do it today. So it's really not standardizing it like in the industry anymore, but actually doing things the way people would do it.
So give us an example.
In IT, it's great, right? There's a huge demand for IT people to create new things, and we're using our best experts just to keep things up and running. The techies that actually lose their jobs get better jobs the next day. It's fantastic.
But you wouldn't expect that to happen in other parts of the economy?
There are certainly jobs that are hard to replace, and skill sets that are easy to replace by machines, and you don't know where to go next. This is deliberately why we decided to start this in IT itself, because there's such a huge demand, and it gives us the opportunity to work through what should we be doing next.
So if we look at the history of the industrialization of artificial intelligence, what have been the main waves, and what's the wave of the present that we're seeing?
Well, I think that you have, in the 60s, a lot of the thinking that was done. If I look at the math that we're doing, mainly that is from the late 60s, and we've just made it usable on an industrial scale, and created automation methods with it. So a lot of thinking in the 60s. First wave in the 70s, when we thought about expert systems and how these things could work, but still thinking very much like a machine in a binary way. Like humans don't think that way. Humans are very rarely binary. And in the 80s, we had this idea of building neural networks, doing something that works like a brain, and that totally didn't work at all. Then you had to have lots of new names for artificial intelligence technology. And now the whole topic is back with the question of, we have now enough compute power to actually use the ideas from the 60s. We have enough data to give a machine this context that it needs to work through it. And I think that we're going to see a few very interesting developments.
So the sort of things that weren't possible 10 years ago but are now being done on an industrial scale. I mean, can you give us a flavor of the kinds of activities that are now possible for machines?
Well, first of all, let's have a look at what does automation mean so far, right? Yeah. Automation should mean that machines are doing something alone, autonomously. But in our language, it means that something is done in an industrial way. We have put automation equal with industrialization. We standardize stuff, then we consolidate it, and then we automate it, and all that is economies of scale. People put economies of scale as the same thing as automation today. But a lot of things are not standardizable, right? It's very, very, very unlikely that you will meet the same context twice. Let me make an example in our field is in IT operations, in a large complex system with thousands of servers and thousands of applications and maybe millions of users, is very unlikely that you meet exactly the same context twice. This is why you have so many people working there, because people have no problem in dealing with these unpredictable contexts. Now we do the same thing with machines, and if I take it our example, on an average, we automate more than 80% of tasks that are given to IT departments today. So that is quite a huge scale that is going to, and I think that you will see this in other areas coming up, and it's kind of the industrialization of individual production.
And it's about being able to handle shades of grey, because you have this broader contextual sense of what's going on.
Yeah, there's no binary decision, this is context A or this is context B or this is product A or product B, but there's all the varieties you can possibly think of, and there are a gazillion variables out there.
So apart from IT, where do you see what other industries or jobs do you think are most ripe for this kind of intelligent automation?
Well, there are a lot of industries ripe for it, but I can tell we built a machine that has does human problem solving. So when we were finished with the base technology, we thought about where to apply it. And we looked at two things. We looked at IT and we looked at medical diagnostics. And I think medical diagnostics would be a fantastic thing to have a machine do, because currently you have all these doctors and they are specialists, right? You have one guy that knows everything about your heart, the next guy knows everything about your lung, the next guy knows everything about your liver, and they can't even talk to each other properly. Unfortunately, your body doesn't come in these single parts. It's actually an interactive system. So it'd be much better if you could have an expert that knows all these things. And medical knowledge is already put down in a machine-readable way, right? It's this. If you talk to a medical student, the stuff they learn by heart most of the time is really machine processable. So I think the medical diagnostic section of medicine is one of those things that we really will see a lot of AI going there. There's a lot of regulation involved as well, but that is a very profitable way, very healthy way for us to go.
And what about this broader sense that there are all these middle-class jobs, there are all these people going into work and doing fundamentally repetitive work in the service sector? I mean, do you think you'll see a lot of those jobs go very quickly? And which industries, banking, or which industries will go first in that respect? Law?
We could have a discussion about banking and whether we need banks anymore and stuff like this, but it has nothing to do with AI. I think that in the services industry, anything that is human interaction, I think actually those are jobs that are growing. I mean, people like to interact with people. And the more of a valued customer you get, or the more expensive your service gets, the more likely it is that you have people, a person at the other end of whatever you're doing. So I think that the front end, or the interactive part, is actually becoming more of a people's job thing, but the back end, all these processes that get worked through to create a service, that certainly is something that's up for automation today. It's just, we try to automate it, right? This is why there's a process manual.
Although, I mean, I suppose if you think of that, the movie, it was She, where you had Scarlett Johansson's voice on the front end of the front end of the personal device, and the user fell in love with the artificial intelligence. I mean, do you see that happening eventually, or?
Well, as long as the lady is then so nice to actually push him back into falling in love with a human, that might be a good idea. I don't see that coming close.
Right.
We can simulate things like this for like 5 minutes as the so-called Turing test, but I don't think this is not what AI research is about. It's not what people are building.
So tell us a bit about the industrial structure of your industry at the moment. I mean, how big an industry is this? How fast is it going to deliver this change? I mean, you've obviously just received a big round of financing from KKR, one of the biggest private equity firms, and are being turned loose on their portfolio of companies. But who else is out there, and who is driving this change?
Well, the AI market is hard to define because you can apply AI to a lot of things. I can tell you about the IT services market, which is about 1.2 trillion. So 1.2 trillion dollars a year is spent on just keeping the technology in the old enterprises up and running, which is a crazy number. At the same time, these enterprises are afraid of being eaten up by the Googles and Facebooks of the world. Oddly enough, those are also the companies doing a lot of AI research. And they have the expertise to create better services. It's just eaten up by their operational budget, the money they would need to do so. So if you free up budget, they certainly can put up a better fight or even win.
And what about Watson at IBM? I mean, that seems to have been getting quite a lot of buzz.
That's great marketing. It is absolutely fantastic marketing. And I love Watson because it touches one of those fields that is very hard for any computer to do. It gives a human an interface that is much more friendly than a keyboard and a screen. Right? You have a machine to talk to, and that'll actually understand even the crudest sentences you can form. And I think that technologies like Watson as an interface are very important.
And you work with them a bit, do you?
Yeah, we totally love IBM Research and cooperate with them on what we build decision chains, and they actually understand what people are saying and convert that into something that our machine can read.
So if we go back to this broad question of, you wipe out a lot of jobs. I mean, as an economist, I think we're wrestling with two issues. One is that the speed of change is going to be much faster than we've seen in previous periods where the agricultural revolution happened or the earlier industrial revolutions happened. And so the speed of job loss in developed countries is going to be much, much greater due to technology in the next 20 years than it has been in any previous 20-year period. And that even if you are going to start to create new jobs to fill the gap, there's going to be a huge lag and a lost generation of people in the workforce. Do you find that a realistic scenario?
Well, I can see it for our industry. Most of those process jobs have already gone to India. And oddly enough, some of the best conversation I'm having and some of the best clients that we're getting are out of India. And I ask these people why are you even talking to us? We're putting you out of business, right? And they have it very clearly mapped out. They go and say, well, but labor arbitrage, nothing else they're doing is labor arbitrage is coming to bite us in the backside because China is offering this thing that we're doing at half price. So still being able to offer that service is economically totally viable. And I think that our job, I mean, in the developed world, we own, 80% of the wealth? You know that much better than I do. But I think that brings a responsibility. If we own 80% of the wealth, we also have to contribute. That doesn't mean that we have carte blanche to lie in front of the television and not contribute.
But I mean, if one looks at what you might call the Uber cycle, I mean, Uber you'd have Travis sitting up here on stage and saying we're going to create lots of jobs, but we know that within a relatively short period of time, all cars are going to be automated and drive themselves, and so there'll be no jobs at all, in fact, created by Uber. I mean, how fast is that cycle going to happen, and do you feel like we have any sense of what the jobs are that are going to replace those jobs for most people?
Well, I think that the threat here is not so much Uber, it's more the self-driving cars. But that's a good thing, right? It's on everything except for people who are not prepared. That's a great thing because you need 70% less cars. You need you'll have no traffic congestion. You'll have people being. It's much cheaper to get from A to B in the end. So your question was, what are the people going to do next? And this is precisely the discussion that has to happen. Is what are we going to do next? And I think there are immensely many problems out there that are worth our time. And just because things are automated, that also means their price is going down. The money or the value for money that is there is still there to be spent. Now it's only there to be spent on solving other problems.
But I mean, there are two reasons why work has become so important. One is a sense of purpose. How do we give people a sense of purpose when most of what they do isn't maybe isn't paying any money? And the second is purely to earn a living. How do we, if people aren't going to be able to earn much money doing stuff that's purposeful, how do we keep them, how do we give them the ability to spend on things they want and to live a materially good quality of life?
Well, I do disagree with the point that people are going to be out of jobs in the first place. It's not that they're not working for money and doing that. They're just doing different things. But if you put everybody here, we're all creative and we need a lot of new ideas. We need to deal with climate change. We need to deal with that we're getting older and that our social systems are not really working anymore. And we need to deal with a global world where you have immigration and we also need to deal with the question of, do we really need extremism and things like this? This is where we actually need people. We need all these heads out there to think about it. And if the things that we see in our current lives can be produced at, let's say, 10% of the cost, there's still 90% of the money left to pay.
So if you'd hired David Plouffe to be your political advisor and you were giving a speech to the public of the world as to why they should be happy about the changes that are underway now and what the biggest advantages to them are going to be of this shift, what would you say?
Get your time back. I think today a lot of people are in their hamster wheel, right? A lot of us go to their work in the morning. They like 8 hours, work, no purpose whatsoever. Go home and then they're tired. There's no time left, right? And what is going to happen is that people actually get their time back and rethink what they want to do with this time. And there's lots to do. It's not that there is nothing to do, and it's not that there's no money to pay.
And their response to that will be, well, how do I live if I have my time?
Because you're contributing. Someone is going to pay for this. If you can solve the challenges that climate change is presenting to us, right? Don't you think that the people affected by climate change will pay?
But what we're seeing at the moment is these winner-takes-all markets where a few people seem to solve the problem and they get fantastically rich, but the rest of us don't get rich. We actually, if you look at America as an example, the average household gets poorer.
That, I think, is a problem that is mainly due to our economic system, not towards artificial intelligence and the way we think. I personally think that we've created the system where it's very hard to lose money once you've got money. And I think that is actually furthering this discussion. This is not so much machine dependent. This is happening right now. Money is moving to where money is. And I think that actually by investing it into more people, because more people can think, you're always better in coming up with a solution within a team, right? You can give more money back to larger teams.
So the problem is not so much the technological advances, but our out-of-date economic system.
Well, a system that certainly doesn't invest properly, right?
Great. Well, on that note, Chris, our time is up, but thank you for being very stimulating and giving us a lot to think about.
Thank you very much.